Sophie, before she went travelling, was an introvert. She didn't go out of her way to talk to many people. She always felt like she needed somebody there by her side. Whether you believe you can do something or you feel you can't do something, you're always going to be right. Oh, gosh. This is a bit of a rabbit hole. It will rip your heart out. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Destination Happiness. In today's episode, I'm going to touch on the top 10 things I've learned since travelling. I've been travelling the world for over a year now, since February 2022. It's actually been 1 year since I've been living in Australia as well, so I thought now's a good time to just think back and reflect on the past year, or more than a year. When I look back at my old photos, go through my camera roll and just see all the incredible things I've done, it kind of takes me back to how I was feeling and thinking at the time, and I see how pale I was when I first got to Bali, and I don't know if I actually do look younger or if I still look young now, but it kind of just takes me back and I realise how far I've come since then. And so I wanted to just share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way. Okay, so number one, the people I've met are what makes a trip, not necessarily the places I've been to. I'll give you an example. When I first got to Brisbane, I started working in a rooftop bar in the valley, Fortitude Valley. You don't necessarily associate work with somewhere you go to make friends, but living in Brisbane and being around incredible people just really made me excited to go to work. And it was the people that made it, the managers, the bartenders, the other waitresses and waiters. I did not expect it at all. In my mind, I thought, oh, I'm coming to Brisbane now, time to stop having fun and time to, you're not living the same sort of travelling lifestyle as you would in Southeast Asia, because maybe I need to go into a bit more detail in this, but I'll just be brief and say that if you're traveling Southeast Asia, it's very cheap. You don't really need to worry about spending too much money because things don't cost that much anyway. Like, for example, accommodation, food, activities. You don't need to think about it so much. But when you get to Australia, my gosh, you realise how expensive it is. And so your travelling lifestyle will sort of have to include, all right, how am I going to start earning money? And one of the sources of income for me was working in the bar. So that's just a bit of background and context for you. In my mind, I thought, this is the end of my fun. I'm now doing something that I don't particularly want to be doing. I mean, I didn't want to work in the bar. I didn't really want to work at all. But when I got there, I absolutely adored everyone I worked with. The people behind the bar, the other people who worked in the cafe downstairs. And it just goes to show that it's the people that make an experience so much better. I think if I worked with different people, I would have hated it. Even if I worked with different people but doing something more fun, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did. So that just goes to show that people truly make an experience what it is. Okay, number two, traveling is definitely not what you see on social media. I think a lot of travel bloggers try and make out as if their lives are so cool and look at me, I live an amazing life, everyone loves me, my life's perfect kind of thing. And you may be able to relate to that too. I do see a lot of that on social media, and I just try and ignore it and unfollow those people because it kind of just makes you feel a bit shit about yourself. But there are low points of travelling that not many people talk about. Sometimes if you haven't made friends yet in a certain place, you're not going to make friends with people everywhere you go. Sometimes you've just got to ride solo, or getting bitten by 1,000 mosquitoes in a day, or having struggles with your visa. That's one particular one that comes to mind. Sometimes it gets a bit tricky trying to figure out all these problems, especially if you're by yourself and in your own boat rather than lots of people with the same situation. Maybe sometimes you'll feel a bit lonely, you'll miss your family, you'll miss being surrounded by people that you love and people that love you. I've also found as well that it is really tricky trying to keep in touch with friends back home, especially if there's a huge time difference. For me, there's currently a 9-hour time difference between Australia and the UK, and I find it hard to get in touch with family and friends. I think I'm better at keeping in touch with my mum and my dad. Whenever I've got time to give them a call, I double check my world clock and realise it's 4 a.m. or something ridiculous back home. So it does get really hard trying to keep up with each other's lives and stay in touch with everybody back home. I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes I feel like my friends that I've made while travelling, I feel like I have a different type of connection with them than my friends back at home. My friends at home I've known for a long time, and now it's sort of like a different kind of friendship with the people that you meet along the way, because you bond over the things that you do. Say if you go on a group tour together or you hire a bike and go on a group ride together, so I think, I've only known you for a few months, and then maybe it's just me, but you start questioning your friendships that you have. Not like you're not true friends, but you don't really know each other that well, do you? You get to know each other, but it's hard to do that with everybody that you meet. Okay, number 3. One of the other things I've learnt is just how grateful I am to be able to live the life the way I do. I'm grateful for my friends, I'm grateful for my family, and I'm so grateful for the freedom that I've enabled myself to have. A lot of people were tied down to their jobs or to their family or to commitments that they may have. And I was in the same boat. However, I had the courage to break those ties and cut the relationships out that weren't serving me well. And here I am now with the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and go wherever I want. If I wanted to, I could move to Japan in a couple months' time or even next month, which sounds bizarre, but I could do that. If I wanted to do a ski season down in Victoria, I could just pack up and go. If I wanted to move to Mexico and learn Spanish, then I could do that too. It's just bizarre to think, but I'm so grateful that I'm able to live a life the way I do. My mum said to me on FaceTime yesterday, some birds just aren't made to be caged, and that's me. Number 4, one of the other things that I've learned just about myself really is I'm more of an extrovert than I thought I was. I feel before I came travelling, I was quite introverted. Maybe that's an exaggeration on how I feel, but that is how I reflect back and view my previous self as. Sophie was an introvert. Sophie, before she went travelling, was an introvert. She didn't go out of her way to talk to many people. She always felt like she needed somebody there by her side, sort of like a comfort blanket or somebody she could turn to. She wasn't so independent. Perhaps that wasn't just before I went travelling. I think there was a period of time before I went travelling and after I split up with my ex-boyfriend, which I mentioned in episode 1, where I grew this confidence. But travelling definitely played an important part in that. And for me, it really helped me become independent and learn more about myself. And as a result, I've become more extroverted and I just believe in myself more. I think I'm my own top supporter, and that's a good thing. I now feel confident to go out and have dinner by myself by the Eiffel Tower, or ask a random stranger in Venice if he wants to get a gondola with me. These things are crazy. But I can do these things now, and I think before it was definitely a confidence thing. Number 5, one of the other things that I've learnt since travelling is being alone doesn't mean you're going to feel lonely. And also, on the flip side of that, even if you're surrounded by people, it doesn't mean you're not going to feel lonely. If you surround yourself with the wrong kind of people, that could actually be worse in terms of how you feel than being alone in yourself. I think loneliness is sort of a thing that comes from within. If you're happy to be by yourself, if you're fulfilled in what you do, how strong is your self-worth? Do you believe that you deserve good things to happen to you in life? And I know recently I haven't been feeling this way. I've kind of been a bit down, actually. What I've learned and what my mum has spoken to me about is to just put yourself on a pedestal. Don't put anyone on a pedestal other than yourself, and just believe that you will meet the right people. The right people will come to you. You just gotta trust the process. If there's a group of people and you don't particularly feel a part of the group, it's better to break away from that and be by yourself than it is to surround yourself with these people who make you feel a certain way. Loneliness is absolutely not the same as being alone. Just remember that. And also as well, if you're worried about being alone and having dinner at the beach, going for a walk by yourself, whatever, it's not a bad thing. If anything, it's quite relaxing. Trust me, you'll be fine. Alright, number 6, the 6th thing I've learned since travelling is saying goodbye to those that you meet along the way is probably one of the hardest parts of all. This is a bit of a rabbit hole. There was this guy that I was travelling around Bali with, and we spent a lot of time together. Every day we'd be together doing one thing or another, going for breakfast or a surf or going exploring. But when you spend so much time with people, you kind of develop a relationship / friendship, whatever you want to call, like a bond with them in a way that you probably wouldn't do back at home. And potentially it's because of the amount of time you spend together. Also, I think another factor is probably the quality of the time you spend together. Like, how many times when you're at home do you go surfing with someone in a week? You know, these bonds that you create with people are special. And you guys, especially when you're solo traveling, over traveling with people, you guys sort of become reliant on one another. Or maybe reliant's not the right word. The reason why you're solo traveling rather than traveling with friends is because you want to make these new bonds with people, and making friendships like that is part of the process and part of the fun. But inevitably, at some point, you're going to have to say goodbye to them, and honestly, it will rip your heart out. I don't even know how to explain it. It's sort of like a breakup, but it's not. It's like a friendship breakup, and it's neither one's fault. It's just paths eventually go different directions. What I've said before is, if the friendship was strong enough, you guys will eventually find a way to meet back up together. And if you don't, then you can just cherish the wonderful times that you did have together. But regardless of whether you do meet up again or not, it is difficult saying goodbye, and then you just think, wow, I'm on my own again. It's something that I'm also mindful of when I do have friendships, relationships with people. I know that I'm going to have to say goodbye to them at some point, so it just means that you cherish the time that you do have together even more. Just be conscious of the fact that nothing is permanent, everything is temporary. But then you can also think of that as the sad times are temporary, the happy times are temporary. If you're upset because you've had to say goodbye to someone that you got along with really well, then you'll always bounce back and manage to find your happiness again within yourself. Which brings me on to my next point. Number 7. No matter how many wonderful people you have to say goodbye to, there's always more people to meet. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I have had a few romances since travelling, and I don't strictly mean this about boys or girls or, you know, like romance type of thing. This can be about friendship too. But no matter how many times you have to say goodbye to someone, there's always a new hello to be said, whether that's with the same person or a new person. I actually watched a video the other day, I think on Instagram, and it was this guy talking about a heartbreak he had when he was younger. And he said that he thought he met his soulmate. Unfortunately, she broke up with him and he was devastated. He said that he didn't care what they did together, even if they were ironing or doing laundry together or doing taxes. All he wanted to be was with her. He didn't care what it was doing. And I think it was sort of a one-way feeling. I don't think it was reciprocated from her, but he met other people that he felt the same way about. There wasn't just one person. It wasn't the one situation. And what he said was, you have multiple soulmates. You just need to find them. Not everyone's going to be perfect for you, but when you do find someone that's perfect for you, they're not the only person that you're compatible with. There's multiple people that you'll be the same with. I did a stat check the other day. There are now 8 billion people in the world. I don't know when it went from 7 to 8, but it must have been recently. 8 billion people in the world. You've got to think, okay, so statistically speaking, there's bound to be more than one soulmate or someone that you get along with well. And you just have to go out there and find them. Alright, number 8. The anxiety of going to a new place doesn't disappear. You just learn to trust the process more. I have felt this way a number of times, and I went home back to England for 2 months, and I became comfortable again, being in my mum's home, being surrounded by my family, having the ability to see my mum whenever I wanted, see my dad whenever I wanted, have home-cooked meals, see my friends, be in my own bed with all the clothes that I had. And yeah, I will admit, I became comfortable within those couple of months. And then when the time came again for me to fly back to Australia, I felt uncomfortable. I felt anxious. I felt like I didn't want to leave. I knew deep down that I'd done it before and it can't be as bad as the first time, because the first time is probably the most difficult because you've got nothing to really think about just to confirm that you'll be okay. But the second time, you know you're okay the first time, so you think, okay, I'll be okay this time too, if that makes sense. The same thing when I left Bali and I went to Vietnam. I thought, oh shit, like starting something new again. And then the same when I left Vietnam and went to Cambodia. I thought, oh shit, here we go again. Back to knowing nobody in the country, back to making friends, kind of thing. But you just realise that it's absolutely fine. You're capable of doing anything. And I mean anything you want. Well, I mean within reason, obviously. But what I'm trying to say is that if you have a goal in mind, if you think, I want to move to LA and pursue an acting career, or I want to move to Costa Rica and pick coffee beans, you can do this. You just need to believe in yourself and trust that you're going to be fine. Okay, number 9, it kind of relates to the previous point I just said, but traveling is so much easier than people think. And if you want something enough, you'll be willing to do anything to make it happen. A lot of the time, when you come across a challenge or a problem and you want to get from A to B, but you think of all the obstacles in the way, if you focus on the challenges and the obstacles, then you will be faced with more. But if you focus on a positive, if you think about having a positive mindset and you know that you can do it, you just don't really know how, but that's fine, you'll figure it out along the way, then a lot of opportunities will just open up. There's actually science behind the idea of manifestation, and that being believing in something and turning it into reality because you'll focus your mind on it. A growth mindset can help you manifest the things that you want and reach your goals. So if you know exactly what you want and you're not sure how to get there, you just need to focus on the positive and then you'll eventually find your way there. If you believe that you can do something, it actually scientifically means that you're more likely of being able to do it. Research shows that our expectations, whether that's a positive or a negative expectation, tends to be confirmed, and this is known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So whether you believe you can do something or you feel you can't do something, you're always going to be right. So make sure you believe in yourself. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to pop in here and say it's something that I've learned since traveling is actually something that I don't really think about anymore, but potentially I may have thought about it prior to traveling, and that is on materialism. I couldn't care less about materialistic things anymore, but if you saw me a year or two ago, well, more like 2 years ago, then I don't think I was materialistic, but I certainly did value things, not necessarily over experiences and events, but I certainly did value things a lot more then than what I do now. You don't need expensive handbags and clothes to define your worth and ensure your happiness. We live in a world where people are always trying to impress others, yet this will probably do the opposite of make you happy. It's just going to put your self-worth down, and if you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, then where does the true happiness come from? You need to make sure that it comes from within. I guess it's controversial. If you want expensive things and that's your taste, then that's absolutely fine. Traveling is highly associated with being expensive. I want to reiterate that traveling does not need to be expensive. You can spend as much or as little as you want or need. You could spend an absolute shit ton of money on 4 weeks in America. And then you could also go cheap in Southeast Asia for the same amount of time and even have a better time. I'm not saying you will, I'm just saying that it doesn't guarantee anything. You can't guarantee that you'll have a good time because you spend lots of money. Okay, I hope that all made sense. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you found it valuable and have learned a thing or two while listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts on, as it really does help boost the rankings so that more people can be inspired to solo travel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.